Every day we make decisions. What time to wake up? What are we going to wear today? What are we going to eat for breakfast? And every time we get in the car, we make a decision whether to wear our seatbelt or not. I vaguely remember high school, but I do remember most of my driver's education class. I remember the mental checklist that you do when you get in the car. The first thing I was taught when I got in the car was to buckle my seatbelt. And for almost 20 years, that has been the first thing that I do when I get in my car. Most of you may know someone who has been injured or killed in a car accident. Was it a fatal accident, or did they live through the accident? What were the details behind the accident? Were they wearing a seatbelt? Well, I have known someone who actually died in a car accident, and she was not wearing her seatbelt. It was back in 1993, and I was a sophomore in high school. On that unforgettable day in 1993, my friend did not choose life. She thought that the semi going down the road in front of her was not driving fast enough, so she decided to pass the truck. When she had to get back in her lane because oncoming traffic was approaching, she swerved back in her lane. When she decided to do that, it was over some railroad tracks. She was going so fast when she hit the tracks that it sent her car airborne. Her car was stopped by a tree. There were 2 occupants in the car. One survived, and one did not. The passenger survived because he was wearing a seatbelt. My friend was not. For my friend, making that one wrong decision when she got in the car that day made the difference between whether she was going to live or die. Wearing a seatbelt is like choosing between life and death. When you get into your car, do you choose life? So today I'm going to persuade you that when you get in a car, either as a passenger or a driver, it is important to buckle up. The first thing I would like to talk to you about is injuries sustained from not wearing a seatbelt. Joshua Christian, a staff writer for the Journal of the Air Mobility Commands magazine, says, your chances of surviving an accident are 5 times as good if you stay inside the car. A seatbelt can keep you from being thrown into the path of another car. He goes on to say, in fatal crashes in 2008, 77% of passenger vehicle occupants were totally ejected from the vehicles were killed. From all the facts and statistics I have read, you are more likely to survive while wearing a seatbelt and sustain some injuries than if you don't wear a seatbelt. Your odds of surviving without a seatbelt are very low. Next, I would like to discuss some injuries that you could sustain from wearing a seatbelt. I think it is only fair to paint a picture from both sides, help you to understand that the importance is greater to wear your belt than not to. Yes, you could sustain injuries from wearing a seatbelt, but again, I think the choice between life and death should be pretty obvious. Alenka Paddle and Wayne Morrison from the Department of Plastic and Reconstructive Surgery at St. Vincent's Hospital in Melbourne, Australia, wrote an article called Seatbelt Injury to the Female Breast, Review and Discussion of its Surgical Management, reports that 16% of seatbelt restrained victims sustained bruises and abrasions of the chest wall following a motor vehicle accident. You could also sustain some neurological and nerve injuries, as well as some abdominal injuries from wearing your seatbelt. The documented studies, however, are few and far between for injuries from wearing a seatbelt compared to the documentation from car crashes and fatalities reported from occupants not wearing a seatbelt. Finally, let's talk about the law. It is the law to buckle up. According to the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, 32 states and the District of Columbia have primary seatbelt laws, which means that a police officer can pull you over just for not wearing your seatbelt. In other jurisdictions, police must have some reason to stop a vehicle before citing an occupant for failing to buckle up. Virginia is a state that only has a secondary seatbelt law. The only reason for getting pulled over cannot be for not wearing your seatbelt. If, however, you are pulled over for a traffic violation and you are caught not wearing your seatbelt, you can and probably will be ticketed and fined for not wearing one. As of July 2012, according to the Governor's Highway Safety Association, the fine is $25, and the driver would be ticketed for any passenger under the age of 18 that is not wearing a seatbelt. I would like to conclude by saying, do the right thing and buckle up. I cannot find any solid evidence to prove to me that any injuries sustained during an accident from wearing my seatbelt could put me in any worse situation than not wearing my seatbelt and taking the risk that the car crash turns fatal. I will leave you with this. The use of seatbelts in passenger vehicles saved an estimated 12,713 lives in 2009. That is a statistic that was pulled from Joshua Christian's article in the Journal of the Air Mobility Commands magazine. We all have control over our decisions and consequences in life. It takes 2 seconds to buckle your belt and make the choice to live.